Hey everyone, welcome to Baiguan Radio, a podcast series affiliated with Baiguan newsletter. My name is Chen, co-editor of Baiguan. Our mission is always providing the most relevant and the most unbiased facts and views about China. Through Baiguan Radio, we'll invite people from all walks of life to give you a fresh idea of how real people and business on the ground are. Today, my co-editor Robert and I will talk about key events in China and how we understand and contextualize them. So let's talk about some of the popular topics on China.
Yeah.
Among our readers asked a lot of questions recently. One of the biggest news that was asked is related to statistics.
Yeah.
The Bureau of Statistics actually announced that they're going to stop publishing youth unemployment rate beginning from August. There's a lot of discussion about it.
A lot of, not only discussion, I would say, a lot of making fun of this embarrassment.
It's feeding to the narratives again, right? That China is creating this black box of information. But I actually went to see the official WeChat articles. They did offer explanation. But again, when I asked, one level or second level deeper, I cannot understand the logic behind it. It's not convincing at all.
Right.
So what do you think? Why are they doing this?
Well, I think at a fundamental level, I would argue that transparency is really not at the core of Chinese value system, right? Transparency is good. Everyone knows that. Transparency is good for governance. But I think within the Chinese value system, there are higher tiers of priorities. And in this particular case, I would argue it's pragmatism. The economy is not really doing well right now, and the government is very anxious to ignite the growth. And right now, what government understands is people's confidence is the most important driving force right now. A lot of business people are not confident. A lot of investors are not confident. So they try to create more confidence by resetting expectations. And I think it's all part of that. Even though certain things are sacrificed, things like transparency, right? Things like showing enough data to help you understand what's going on in the economy. I wouldn't say I agree with this approach, but I think underlying this act is still the anxiety of the government that they want the economy to do better. They are taking actions, and although some of the actions we don't necessarily agree with.
I'll buy it as an explanation. It's better than narratives that China is trying to save face or try to save face globally, right? Not to show.
But there's no point of saving face, right?
Yeah. But that's an easier narrative.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That China doesn't want to show the difficulties domestically.
Yeah.
Right. But your interpretation is actually more pragmatic and rational, right? But when I look at that again, so you said that's a rational decision serving the purpose of managing expectation. But how was it made? It's quite abrupt. The decision is made. I mean, the announcement itself is quite abrupt, right? There's no pre-warming up. There's no, closing down, winding down the social buzz.
Yeah, that's the problematic part. I think setting expectations is right, but how you do it is actually very important. And I have to say, by just shutting this down, it's not really very responsible and it's not really professional. But I can also totally understand how this kind of decision was made. Because in the best form of the world, we will want these government officials to give a clear explanation for the statistics they had. People in the industry will always want the government to explain a little bit more about how they arrive at their statistics, right? It's not just youth unemployment. Yeah. It's about the GDP, the CPI. There's minimal details.
Yeah.
There are no information about the sample size, the biases. When they kind of rebalance the statistics, there's no explanation at all. Nobody knows what they mean, when they publish their data anyway.
Yeah, we got to reverse engineer to understand the methodology.
Yeah, and no one can confirm whether the readings of the data is right or wrong.
Yeah.
I would say they could do better by being more transparent, by being more professional. If a data is not supported by the underlying assumptions and details, and what we call the data metrics, the data dictionaries, right? Then that's not good data anyway. It's just some numbers on the wall. And I don't think that's something they have realized. And that comes back to the question, how the decision like this is made. I think it's just made because there's just a lack of real talents at those levels, or a team of professionals and talents that are, have to be very good at what they're doing statistics. At the same time, very good at facing the public, explaining their data to the public in the same way, say, we at Big One Lab explain our products to our clients, in a similar way. At the same time, those people also have to survive in the gigantic bureaucracy, right? So basically, what we are asking for is someone who is both good at dealing with the subject matter, who is good at dealing with the general public, and who is good at dealing with their colleagues, their peers, and their bosses. This is hard to ask. And it's just, I think a lot of problems in China come back to the quality of the personnel. And it may not be more complicated than that.
That makes sense. This is not the first time, right? A ministry or specialty department did something publicly and did not manage the PR very well. Right?
Yeah.
And actually, what your theory reminds me that it might be a systematic characteristic, right? Because of China's education system, in the first place, right? We have to, choose a major in first year. Right? While when you're in Hong Kong or in the US, actually, we can study interdisciplines classes first. So we kind of get trained in the liberal arts basis and got hints or taste some skill sets from different subjects. Right. So,
but that's not what most people have access to. Most people go through their exams, the learning by rote, and all that. So they are like people that are in the Bureau of Statistics. They are really good at statistics. And and as well as maneuvering, through the, like you said, the promotion system or the political system, right, to get promoted all the way to the top. But PR is not, at least for now, it's not the biggest training that they need, the requirement for them to get to the top. If you look at it this way, how do you think they can do better if they have a multidiscipline team? Well, certainly, I would just recommend them to treat the public as one of their clients, right? The actually data explained well, and if you explain the biases, the sample size, and all these details well, can be good, can be really helpful. So when there are, like, say, different aberrations, different inflection points in the data, people understand whether it's for real or whether it's just because of some data irregularities. And for example, youth unemployment, is that really bad right now? I mean, just looking at the data, it is telling a bad story. But the fact is, if we have access to exactly how many people they have surveyed in their statistics, what kind of people are responding, right? Are they not looking for jobs, or are they looking for jobs or don't get any offers? All these details, if are there, could be way more beneficial than just telling a number, right? So for example, when it comes to, say, youth unemployment, this specific matter, I think what the data tells, there's still a gap between what the data tells and what the reality is on the ground. So like, for example, if we tell you youth unemployment in China is over 20% and it's getting higher and higher, you imagine, young people don't have any jobs, they kind of sleep on the streets, and they're creating troubles, right? That's the implication.
When I first saw that news, I actually spent, I think, half day getting through the methodology. And come to a conclusion that when they say, first of all, the 20% seems like so shocking.
Right.
But when I came to understand the methodology, of course, it's not the official explanation, but I read some scholars' paper, and there's a number that's like I can come to, which is like 6 to 9 million. That's a lot, but still it's smaller scale than the 20% of youth that's being unemployed, right? So, but on your point, when you say on the ground, the observation difference, how bad, from your observation, is youth unemployment?
I think one thing that people have to understand is that when we talk about youth unemployment in China, it has specific Chinese characteristics in that if we talk about youth today, like if we talk about people from 16 or 18 to 23, 24, right? Those people were born at the turn of century. Most of their parents, they were working in the beginning of the reform and opening up, right? And their parents are the first generation that have accumulated some wealth.
So 70后.
Right, the post-70s, right? They have apartments, they have some assets. So it's not like in some countries, when you talk about youth unemployment, you're talking about young people on the streets doing drugs, right?
Yeah.
That's the imagery the Western societies have. In China, it's different. It's not as if they don't have jobs. They actually do have some job opportunities. It's just there's a discrepancy, there's a gap between, I think for many people, there's a gap between the jobs that are offered and the jobs they're willing to take. There's a lot of manual jobs, for example, factory jobs that are paid well, but a lot of college graduates won't go down that path. And what's the alternative? Well, they can still stay at home. You know, the parents will still provide. And maybe it's not easy to find a job now, I can find a job later or something. So it's a totally different type of unemployment we're talking about here. This is a type of unemployment that may be not so much of a shock to the society at the moment. And the impact could be quite different from, say, youth unemployment in, say, North Africa or the Middle East. It's very different. And I think that's something that we have to understand.
One of takeaway I get from you is that family actually can support the youth for a while when they're looking for jobs. Right? That's kind of China's characteristic. Maybe it's rooted in Confucianism, right? Confucius, that family will support each other. Right? That's a social system.
And parents won't just stop providing. You know, if their kids didn't have a job, the parents will be anxious, but they will still provide.
Yeah. So when we think that way, the negative social impact of youth unemployment in China actually is sort of contained by this social structure.
Yeah.
Right. I think there's another interesting thing about structural. So what you say is a structural unemployment issue, right? People going to colleges in university do not want to take the blue collar jobs. I'm seeing more and more youth taking part-time gigs on Xiaohongshu and TikToks. Or actually Douyin, right? The Chinese version of TikTok. Live streaming, right? Themselves, performing, selling products, writing their stories and posts online about eating, shopping, traveling. And they're making some money. So with that, right? With that, as well as parent support, there's less, I would say, less stress for them, but they're still, I guess they're still working.
Youth unemployment on the surface is an economic question, right? How many people are employed or not? But the reason we pay so much attention to it is because it's a social and possibly political matter. Like, right? Young people without jobs, what can they do? So when we look at this, we have to be able to understand the social and political aspects to it. And with that, you have to take family values, social norms into account. So it's not a purely economic matter. But again, if the bureaus, they can be more transparent with their methodologies, showing more details of their data, the underlying reasonings, the underlying data to explain better the rationale between changes in data, it would be so much better than us sitting here guessing about what's the real situation out there. So,
I agree. And actually, this discussion actually also get back to the narrative that we talked about before. It depends on their priority, right? Their priority is to be accountable to their supervisors, right? Which is the state council. The state council priority maybe is to manage expectations. However you do it, right? Just manage expectation.
Right. It's really something like, as you said, give you an instruction which is vague enough so that you can interpret it in your own way. Right. I think it works like in big corporations, big offices. It's all the same. The big bosses, they would just maybe give them the direction. And the underlings, they choose the best possible, the most efficient method they can think of to comply. And
so I'm always trying to rationalize all these, I would say, incomprehensible events, right? So the rationalization for this is, and the positive spin is that actually they want to manage expectation, which is I wouldn't say smart thing, but the probably the right direction to do. Right? To
they're not lying flat.
Compared to publishing fake data, right? This is actually a good, I would say in some ways a good tool to use, right? In terms of manage expectation. But then again, there's aging population, there's bursting real estates. So the question now, we are hearing that narrative again. Is China collapsing? It's coming back again.
Every year.
Every
once
year.
in a while.
Well, actually, it's more now. It's every quarter. Right?
Every day, I would say. There's a news article, some commentary carrying this ethos.
I get it, right? This is an eye-catching topics, eye-catching title for a news article.
Right.
But in reality, how are we gonna spin this? I mean, it's not again like it's not as fast-growing, exciting as it is for pre-COVID.
Yeah.
But I'll share my view later. But what are you seeing? Like
Yeah, I think, well, definitely for the friends around me, especially we live in the first-tier cities, right? A lot of we talk with a lot of business people, we talk with a lot of investors. There is a general feeling of pessimism. The lack of confidence is really palpable compared with many years before. I mean, I would say this is the most pessimistic time that I have ever witnessed.
Yeah.
Just looking at the people around me and looking at the news headlines from the West, right?
Yeah.
But that's one part of it. There's also more layers to it. When you open up a kind of Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, you have this feeling that China is really collapsing, right? All the hell is breaking loose. Society is on the brink of disasters. That's the imagery that they try to convey. But I think I do have a problem with that part. Because,
I call that sensational narrative.
Right. But here, we walk on the street, we live our life. And actually, there are things that you cannot really explain if the society is really breaking down. Like, for example, just look at the hotel prices, the flights, the length that we're going to buy the train tickets. Everyone is on the move. If you go to a train station, I know it's a mixture of holiday going as well as going to work. It's really hard to reconcile that with an economy that is just going down. I would say people are less happier than before. I would say a substantial amount of people are poorer. I would say expectations are less confident than before. But you do still feel the urge to work. People are still hardworking, and that's something we want to stress, over and over again. Down and wait for, government to hand out some subsidies, or wait for some miracles to happen.
Yeah.
People are going around places.
Yeah, definitely, I'm seeing that. I think the sentiment come from there are two major sentiments, right? One is the disappointment. Many people walking out of COVID lockdown is expecting a rapid V-shaped recovery.
Yeah.
Right. So that's not happened. That has not happened. I didn't expect that, given the other countries when they open up.
Yeah.
There was no such thing called V-shaped recovery.
Yeah.
So why would that happen in China? Right. I think second sentiment. I actually just realized is that this is a first downturn experienced by people growing up in our generation, the reform open up generation.
True.
I was under the impression that there was, experience in the Asia financial crisis.
I was too young.
Yeah, and then there's the 08-09 collapse, the financial, the Great Recession.
Yeah.
Right. But US in the college, right, I saw that, high unemployment rate, hard to find jobs and things like that. But actually, when I asked my friends around my age in China, who grew up in China during those years, that was the peak years. Remember, this is 08 Olympiad.
Yeah.
Right?
Great Recession for China was really short.
Yeah, they didn't feel that. Yeah. So then there's no such thing called downturn in their career.
Yeah.
So this is the first time they face it. So I think that also contributed to the sentiment, right? Because when you first I actually am more used to it. I guess it's I was looking for a job back then in 08-09. So that's the two sentiment I observe, and of course that's not just. So I agree with you that when you look at the sentiment level, it's less happier.
Yeah.
Right? But when we look at the working bus, we are working hard. You and I are working hard. Our friends are working hard.
Yeah.
One interesting thing is that actually many of our friends faced really bad. They had to close down their business. Right, a lot of entrepreneurs had to close down their business last year due to COVID.
Yeah.
And then they actually turned around one way or another. Many of them actually went on live streaming.
Yeah.
Shared the experience and they got popular. Right. One of our friends actually now is one of the largest influencer on I think science education across different platforms. He has 50 million followers. He started, I think he pivoted a few times, and then he started his live streaming and short videos 2 years ago,
Yeah.
during COVID, and it turned around. And yeah, so I think people are still working hard.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned a good point. For many of people of our generation, this is the first big downturn, right? But also, when you also look for longer period of time, even if some people are getting, less rich, they haven't been rich for a long time anyway, right? For many of them, and for many of their parents, they came from the countryside. They rose rapidly in the last 20 or 30 years. The experience of poverty, the experience of underdevelopment is still very fresh. So even if, what I mean is the work ethics, the spirit of doing hard work, making a better life is still pretty much over there. So I think it's also not bad to have some downturn, to witness and experience some downturn in your life, because that's part of life, right? It's all cycles, up and downs, and I think for really a lot of people that we know, including ourselves, it's also a moment for growth. It's a moment for us to understand, so cash flow is quite important, right? Making profit is important, not just like,
top line growth.
Yeah, and there will be an end. I mean, capital raising is not endless. All these actually pretty important lessons.
Like a maturing up stage, right? Growing from a teenager to
it is. Chinese economy is like growing suddenly from a teenage to a kind of more adult life.
Speaking of growing up, right? I think the healthcare system is going through some sort of growing up.
Yeah, like a lot of industries in China. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think also people that are focusing on like watching China may have noticed on actually late July 28th.
Yeah.
The Central Commission for Discipline Inspection announced that CCDI actually announced to launch a year-long anti-corruption campaign on China's healthcare industry, especially focusing on the pharmaceutical and medical equipment industry.
Yeah.
All right. So here's some big numbers. Year to date, over 170 hospital heads and party secretaries have been investigated. 3 million medical reps are on thin ice. They actually went on deleting their WeChat records with doctors. My personal take is that this is part of the mandate to address people's three big mountains: 三座大山, education, housing, healthcare.
Right.
But still come to a shock, right? I think our readers, investors, and business people are, especially those that invest in the healthcare industry, worrying. If you look at the stock price, right, they're worrying that is another crackdown, like the crackdown on education industry.
Yeah.
Right? Are they going to wipe out? I'm sure it's not. They are not going to wipe out the whole industry, but is it off that scale?
Yeah.
Right. That's a question. If you look at the stock price of those companies, you see that kind of drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think to talk about healthcare, we have to first of all think about. Well, we have to put the things in the right context. So, China's healthcare is far from being perfect, but it also has its many strengths. For many people who have not been to a Chinese hospital, we have to first give this overview of what China's healthcare system is like, right? I think in all countries' healthcare system, there are different problems, right? There's a lot of debate about the U.S. healthcare system. There's debates everywhere about different countries' healthcare system.
Yep.
Overall, I would summarize and for any country, their healthcare system, they are facing, I would say, an impossible trinity or impossible triangle of three things. Affordability, that's for one thing, whether you can afford the healthcare. Accessibility, whether you can have access to healthcare. And then the quality, both the service quality as well as access to good medical equipment and medicines. So if you put things into this kind of perspective, you can understand where China is coming from, where China's healthcare system is situated in this. Basically, of these three things, China's healthcare system only sacrifices the last one, the quality, the service quality. I would say the biggest question, the biggest problem with our healthcare, hospitals in China is that really it's such a crowded place. There's so many patients. The doctors are very impatient, right? And it's like, you know, if you go to the hospitals, if you go to the surgeries, it always feel like every time I go to the hospital, I feel like I'm just a pig going through the kind of the cutting line, right? I'm just a product and just going to this procedure and that, not really treated as a human.
Right.
But I would say that's the only big weakness or big issue I find about the Chinese healthcare system. And actually, they sacrifice that in order to achieve the two other goal, which is to make it both affordable and accessible. So affordable, this, we mentioned in our newsletter, the national, healthcare insurance, they actually compensate a lot.
I think like 70 or 80%, right?
Right. I mean, you go to visit a doctor. It's just cost as much as say $2 per visit.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Right.
Even at the top hospital.
Yeah. And accessible is also true. I mean, for most of the diseases, if you just go to the hospital and you make a booking, you make an appointment, you will have it, right? Maybe at the same day, maybe a few days later. They actually, I would say, the Chinese government they commit a lot of their resources and energy into making this system both affordable and accessible. So if we look at other healthcare system, like for example the US, right? You know which one they sacrifice, right?
Like time, right? And affordability. Actually,
yeah, affordability as well.
Yeah, like I remember when I was in college, when I have to look at, even in college, I have to make a reservation for like 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Right, for checking out the code.
Right.
Right. Then I had insurance, but I still have to pay like a couple $100 for a mile.
Yeah.
Panadol or prescription.
Something is unthinkable in China.
Yeah. I think for China, like you say, visitation is $2.
Yeah.
And then medicine probably 50 RMB.
Yeah.
So that's like $6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the setup, right? This is the setup. This is where we begin with.
Oh, and I can actually reserve or see doctor in the top hospitals.
Yeah.
Like within a week.
Yeah.
And there are like 10 top 3A Sanjia hospital for me to choose, which is like the top hospitals nationally.
Yeah. And one thing people don't realize is, because Chinese hospitals are so accessible, the doctors are so busy, they're seeing so many cases. I would say Chinese doctors are way more experienced with similar doctors of similar age.
This is more training data.
Yes. Usually 10 times more patients, more cases. So although I would say Chinese doctors, they are very impatient with you.
Yeah.
They're really like they're not nice, but they get things done. You break your arm, they fix your arm pretty well. So I think that's the setup we're facing with. But you have to realize this is also a distorted system. Of all these three things, they distort one thing for the benefit of two others, right? So one big distortion is the whole, the compensation system for the doctors. The doctors in many countries are among the highest paying jobs, right? In China, it's more complicated. For young doctors, most of the doctors, the pay is actually, it will be shocking to you how lowly paid they are. Their wages are similar with, say, a factory worker.
Yeah.
It's sometimes even lower than that. And why? Because the system is created for the benefit of making it affordable and accessible, right? So, but then why should doctors do this? Why should doctors do this kind of job? It's both, busy. It has a lot of pressure. You're facing life and death situations, and you're not getting well paid, right? So they have to still build more distortions into the system.
Right.
So, for example, every doctor has this goal that if they rise up to a certain level, their hospital head or head of the practice, then that's the moment when they can reap the benefits, the profits. Then you will have medical representatives coming here. That's also because healthcare in every country is very complicated in the sense that in this industry, the consumer, which is every patient, the actual decision maker, which are the doctors, right?
Yeah.
And the payer usually are the healthcare, the national insurance providers, all the insurance companies. All these different parties, they're just very
Power agency just got distorted.
Yes,
right? Yeah.
yes. So doctors do enjoy a lot of power. And so in a totally low-paying environment, what should doctors do? All the doctors, they keep grinding and working in that environment with the hope that one day they can rise to the top, and it's basically delayed gratification for a lot of doctors. So one distortion in the system leads to more distortions. And for a while, it works. But again, it is corruption. It is corruption.
Yeah.
This type of corruption, once it persists, will grow into a monster of its own. And for example, overprescription. A lot of doctors will, because they need to have some decent income, they just overprescribe.
Right, for our readers, so reason for overprescription is that the doctor will get kickbacks.
Yes.
To every drugs. Every dose of drug that is prescribed.
Yes. Yeah. But one thing I want to emphasize is that doctors in China get kickbacks. They want to get kickbacks, not because they are greedy. It's because
they need to live.
Their actual official compensation is not in line with the efforts and the risks and the hardships they go through as a doctor.
Yeah, I can actually, when you talk about overdose, you remind me of the film or the incident that I read about the US on OxyContin, right? Produced by Purdue Pharma.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing that was reported and then followed by so many people. I think in the 80s, which is painkiller drugs produced by Purdue Pharma. And then recently there's a TV show on Netflix called Painkiller.
Right.
Again, talk about this. I don't know if it's dramatic result or not, but the overdose, problem and the outcome of it is actually more saddening in the US.
Yeah.
When I watch that TV show and that documentary and on OxyContin, I haven't heard that in China. I mean, I do question if the doctor, every time I visit a doctor, if the doctor prescribed too many drugs.
A lot of them are.
Yeah. But I haven't read reports about I would say, a nationwide overspread of certain drugs.
Yeah.
That's like out of control and creating mass issues.
Right. I don't think there is, but still, it's a problem. But I just want to let our listeners, our audience understand, it's not a one-sided problem. It's a result of what the system like this is like. And I think every once in a while, they need to reset the system. They need to, try to limit the effects of their systematic distortions. But I think the next question is, what is going to come? What is going to replace this? I think that's a harder question to ask.
Yeah, I'm curious about it too.
Yeah, so I think one possible offshoot will be, I would say if I imagine myself to be a doctor at the public hospitals, some of the doctors will maybe choose to leave the public system. Actually, there are private hospitals in China.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but private hospital is never the mainstream part of the China healthcare system, because all the best resources, the best equipment, the best, mostly the access to academic advancement and the skills and all that, and all the patients are in public healthcare system. So it's a over-concentrated, it's an over-concentration of resources, medical resources at public hospitals, especially the top-ranking public hospitals.
Yeah, because they're also really good research institutes.
Yes. So the young doctors, however hard the work is, they still want to stay at hospitals and advance their career in those ones. But if the current round of anti-corruption campaign persists, I think it's very likely that more and more of the doctors will consider actually leaving the system, once and for all. So it's likely that the China's healthcare system will develop into more on the one side you have many public hospitals, but on the other side you also have many good private hospitals.
A tiered system.
Yeah, tiered system, right? For the rich people, they have more to pay for. They have insurance companies. They go to the private hospitals for better services, and there are also good doctors over there. And the public system will serve their more socialist functions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's possible.
Yeah, I think that already sort of exists since there's
Yeah.
VIP departments in the hospital. Right?
Yeah.
And there's also private hospital.
Right.
But actually, I sometimes when I try to use the VIP reservation, I get better services because
Yeah.
actually I get more face time than the regular inpatient post, which costs $2, but for VIPs it costs like $50.
Yeah.
$50.
Yeah.
Still, it's actually quite affordable.
It's already subsidized.
From our
Yeah.
point of view. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we talk about 3 of the most discussed topics
Yeah.
on China, and I hope our readers can get something out of it. What's upcoming for writings?
Yeah, for the upcoming week, we will continue we just tell the story of the small little city called Gaoyu in the Jiangsu province, a very ordinary city, and we told the story of that as an example of what many cities in China are like, and we try to understand what China's future will hold from this little microscopic view of a very ordinary place, right? So we just published part 1. I think next week we're going to publish the part 2, and I think that's even the more interesting part of the series, because there's a lot of the more human level reading, human level understanding of what China's local government is, how they're thinking and how they're interacting with local businesses. So for that, definitely stay tuned. While waiting this week, we are also we're going to discuss more in depth about a company, Pinduoduo, which is a highly watched after and highly controversial Chinese e-commerce platform. So we're going to look at their recent growth and their challenges for today, and we will also look at a fast-growing Western brand, which is Lululemon, in their performances in China. A lot of our readers are curious about how Lululemon is doing. They seems to be doing pretty well. So for more details, definitely stay tuned to us.
Great. Ordinary